Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books, and today I am bringing you a review for a book that I am very excited to talk about, and that is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. So The Way of Kings is the first book in a planned 10-book series called The Stormlight Archive. It is Brandon Sanderson's big series that he's working on. He has his Mistborn series as well, which is split up into multiple sub-series. That's his other big series, but this is like the main series, the big epic fantasy series that he's writing. And this is one that I have been both very excited and very intimidated to read because I've heard that it is one of Brandon Sanderson's best books, if not, in some people's opinion, his best work. Same thing with the entire Stormlight Archive series. But it's a 1,200 page book, at least in the mass market paperback, which at this point is the longest book that I've ever read. So that was very intimidating to me, of course. But I read it and I loved it. So first, let's talk about some positives with this book, which is basically most of the book. I really enjoyed this book. I have very few complaints, but I will talk about those when I get to them. The kind of background and story behind this book is that it is shared across a handful of different point of views. There are several more than just those few, but those are in interlude chapters. This book is split up into 5 sections. And in between the sections, there are these short interlude chapters that have other point of views, but the three main point of views are Kaladin, Dalinar, and Adolin. They're kind of both together, and Shallan and Yasna. Those are kind of the three main parts of this book. This book in particular is primarily, I would say, Kaladin's story because each part has Kaladin chapters in it. The other parts kind of flip-flop between Dalinar and Adolin and Shallan and Yasna. So like part 1 is Kaladin and Shallan, and then part 2 is Kaladin, Dalinar, and Adolin, and then it kind of switches back and forth like that. But this is mainly Kaladin's book. He gets some flashback scenes or flashback chapters in here, so that he's kind of the main character of this book. And basically this book takes place on the Cosmere planet of Roshar, which is kind of strikes me as this more desolate sort of place. It has this area called the Shattered Plains, which is where very much of this book takes place on, which is this area that is just has a bunch of big canyons and caverns, and the landscape is like completely like messed up. It's a very hostile world. There's these storms that happen that are really intense. There's these creatures that are really you don't want to get caught by one of those creatures. And you have Kaladin, who is an ex soldier and surgeon, who gets brought into Bridge 4, which is a bridge crew that is involved with like the armies and stuff. They kind of have to help out, but they're basically enslaved. And he starts out in a very bad place mentally. He I believe has depression. He has struggled because he's a surgeon, but he is not able to save the people that he wants. He has let a lot of people down, and been unable to save a lot of people that he really cares about. And this is kind of him trying to kind of, in a way, redeem himself, make him kind of into a better person, and really try to help the people of Bridge 4. And then you also have Dalinar and Adolin, who I believe are some sort of royalty. I can't remember the exact terms off the top of my head. There's a lot of world building and stuff in this book, so I apologize if I get anything wrong. It's a lot to remember. But they are kind of higher up people who have this armor and weapons called Shardplate and Shardblades, which are very rare and basically make you the most powerful person on any given battlefield. They are involved with the armies and stuff, and there's some interesting stuff going on with them and all of the people around them. You have Dalinar, who keeps having these visions, and he's studying old texts from many years past, and people think that he's kind of losing his mind. So you've got a bunch of stuff going on with them, and then you also have Shallan and Yasna. Shallan is a thief who was sent to study under Yasna, or go under the guise of wanting to study under Yasna, but in reality is planning to steal from her. And over the course of her story, kind of gets to know Yasna, learns a lot of stuff. It's a very philosophical side to the story, and I loved all three of these point of view characters. Kaladin is probably my favorite character in this book. He is probably in my top 2 or 3 favorite Cosmere characters at this point, and his journey in this book is just really exciting. It's really satisfying. The characters that he meets in Bridge 4 and around Bridge 4 are all fantastic. I loved many of them, and I also really enjoyed the other point of view characters with Adolin and Dalinar and Shallan. I really enjoyed all of them quite a lot. I really enjoyed the bond between Dalinar and Adolin. They were really great characters. I really enjoyed Shallan and the more philosophical aspect of her chapters, kind of talking to Yasna and other characters, and stuff like that. Overall, all of the point of view characters and the way that they were handled, I absolutely loved. And the stories of these characters, the way that they go, I also was really interested in. This book, despite its length, is really a page turner. I would get to a certain point and I'd be like, I have to know what comes next, and then I'd spend a while reading it. And I just really enjoyed the plots in this book, the storylines, all of that stuff, and the way that they all kind of come together is really cool. And I also really loved the world building in this book. Since this is Brandon Sanderson's big, huge, epic fantasy series, you're gonna have to expect a lot of world building in this book. It is such a vivid world that he creates. In this book, you learn a lot about the world of Roshar. There's a lot of mysteries that still have yet to be uncovered by the time you finish this book as well. There's a lot that I still don't know about it and things that I am very excited to learn about. This is a world that very clearly has like thousands of years of history behind it. And you learn some of that. Some of that is left more mysterious, and I really just enjoyed the way that was handled. I also have to mention the action sequences in this book very quickly. Brandon Sanderson in general in his books, especially in his Mistborn trilogy, I really enjoyed the action in them, and the action in this was great as well. It's not the majority of the book. Of course, with it being so long, there's a lot of character development, character interactions, and, you know, kind of quieter, slower moments where things kind of build up. But when things did get really crazy and action-packed, it was fantastic. The last bit of this book, I mean, Sanderson has a reputation for his Sanderlanche style, which some people have said is basically just a climax, but I think it's a whole lot more than that. It's where everything really comes together and it's just a huge amount of stuff happens. And the last bit of this book, I was waiting for it to happen because I got like, 900, 1,000 pages into this 1,200 page beast. And I was like, okay, when is that kind of going to start happening? And when it started happening, it was just, I could not put it down. I had to know what was going to keep happening. Now that I've talked about all that, I do have a couple of minor gripes with this book. The first one being that I did not really care for the interludes in this book. There is one character who carries over between all of them. I believe there are 2 or 3 interlude sections in this book, each of them being made up of 3 chapters. And as far as I can remember, there's this character named Seth. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly because the name starts with both an S and a Z, but I'm just going to call him that. He's in the prologue, and then he also it has a chapter in each of the interludes and as well as the epilogue. So he's present throughout the book, but only in very, very small chunks. But other than that, the other interlude chapters, as far as I could tell, weren't really that connected to anything else. I don't know what the purpose of that was. Maybe it'll become clearer as I go further through the series. If you've read the series, then you can let me know down in the comments like how relevant that stuff is, because I just didn't really get into it at all. My other really kind of minor gripe with this book is that not all of the main characters really had a coming together point in this book. And I'm sure they probably will in the future, but Kaladin, Adolin, and Dalinar all directly interact in this book as things go along. And Shallan and Yasna do also interact with Dalinar and Adolin at one or two points in this book, very kind of minorly. They don't directly interact, like they don't directly meet face to face or anything. And I would have liked to see all of the characters come together and interact with each other, but the way the story was being told, that wasn't really possible. So it's something that I understand. I just would have liked to see that. But anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say specifically about this book. I absolutely loved it. I really just enjoyed it a lot. It's arguably possibly my favorite Brandon Sanderson book I've read so far. And what I've read so far is the original Mistborn trilogy, Warbreaker, Elantris, and this one. And this may be my favorite so far. It's hard to say because everything else is pretty tough competition. Even Elantris, which is probably my least favorite of the books I've read so far, is still like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10 or something in that range. So I love everything that I have read by this guy. So it's very difficult for me to say definitively this is my favorite one, but it is definitely a very, very strong contender. But as far as a rating for this book, I would give it a pretty strong 10 out of 10. I just absolutely loved it. And like I said, those two gripes that I had with it are the only things that I really took an issue with. I loved all of the characters in here. I loved how they were developed. I loved the stories that they had, how everything came together. I loved the action. I loved the world building. All of that stuff was just super great. But that's pretty much all I got for this review. So let me know down in the comments if you have read The Way of Kings and the rest of the Stormlight Archive series. Let me know how you think the series kind of goes along. Do you think this is the best of the series? Do you think it gets even better from here? Let me know down in the comments. I am very much looking forward to continuing with this series in the near future. And that's pretty much all I've got for you today, so thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.